Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to the AI Argument with myself, Justin Collery, joined as ever by Frank Prendergast. Frank, how's your week been?
Pretty good, Justin. Pretty good. I'm
And
drowning in AI news this week.
can we just point out that it is 17:08 GMT here in Waterford, Ireland? And that's because there's just so much going on. And we were trying to sift through all the news. And we could feel a little bit comforted by the fact that Ethan Mollock, who's a professor, it's his job to keep up on all this stuff. Even he said this week that he was falling behind. There was just too much stuff happening to keep up. Are you getting that feeling too?
I don't know anybody who is interested in AI in the slightest, even in the slightest, who isn't feeling completely overwhelmed.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? All right. So we said we'd do this. Here we go. Quick whistle stop tour of the stuff that is not important enough to actually talk about, but deserves an honorable mention. And this will just give you a flavor for what's going on. So the things that
And
went on this
some
week.
of the things in this list we could probably just like do an entire episode on. It's nuts.
I know, it's ridiculous. So this week, the stuff that we don't have time or just cannot talk about because there's too much going on. OpenAI have raised $40 billion, another 40 billion with a big B, and their valuation was 300 billion. Can I just say their timing is outstanding because the price may not have been as good next Monday as it was last Monday when they raised the money with the carnage that's going on right now in the markets. Don't look, Frank. It'll break your heart. Um,
Mhm.
ChatGPT definitively in an academic study passed the Turing test. I mean, we don't even have time to talk about that. What the hell is going on in the world? Google Gemini 2.5 is the first public AI model to definitively beat the level of performance of a human PhD. This was posted by Ethan Mollock as well. And I find his wording interesting that he said it's the first public model, which implies to me that he knows about some private models that also beats that. But there we go.
And just
Sam,
very briefly before we move on from that one, now it was beat human PhDs on a very, very specific test of like multiple choice questions.
yes, but it beat human PhDs on a very specific test of human choice questions, of which they were the experts in that area.
Mm.
So it's beating PhD people in their own area, which is impressive, I think. I'm
Yeah.
impressed. Um, Sam Altman, literally 10 minutes ago, or 50, well, maybe half an hour ago now, before we came on air, tweeted out that there's been a change of plans. They're going to release O3, the full O3. That is the one that got 78% on the software engineering benchmark there recently. And O4 Mini, a model we have not heard of yet, have not
Yeah.
seen. Both of those are going to be released this month.
I was like, is that a typo? Is that a typo? Do we have an O4? What's going on?
Yeah, we now have an O4 and GPT-5 is going to be released in a couple of months. Things are happening so fast. It's whatever. I don't know. You can't even keep up about it. Anthropic have shown that their models can lie in the change of thought. You might need to give out to me about this because,
Justin,
I mean,
you
I didn't
you
see this
shared this
coming.
with me, and I was like, what have I been saying? What have I been saying? Of course they lie in their chain of thought. And they deceive us, they manipulate us, and they're going to come and they're going to kill us all.
I was shocked. I was shocked. It's really clever. It was an interesting little test they did. So what they did was they asked the model to give them what the answer to a question was, and they would subtly give them a hint, and then they would ask them, did they use the hint or did they not use the hint in order to generate the answer? It was good. It was a good test, and what they showed is sometimes the models can lie. Who knew? That's not all of them.
All of us doers knew, Justin.
How about you, Craig? Have you got things for you that happened this week that we just don't have time to
Well,
talk about?
yeah, well, just really briefly, I did a couple of like releases that caught my eye. One of them you sent me actually, it was I missed this one. It was Meta announces Mocha, which is movie grade talking character synthesis. Now, I don't know if I agree that it's movie grade, but I have noticed that a problem with some of these synthesis with these lip syncing programs is that the mouths kind of like barely move, and sometimes it doesn't really look like what they're saying. This one does look like what they're saying, but I felt like they really over announced in order to achieve it.
Well, you're all thespians.
But still, very, very impressive at the same time. Midjourney releases version 7, which is great. I have been so obsessed with the image generator in ChatGPT that I completely missed that Midjourney released version 7 a couple of days ago because I'm usually obsessed with Midjourney. So I haven't had a chance to play with it, but there's some new features, including a draft mode, which allows you to iterate really, really quickly and then upscale when you're ready.
Yep.
And Runway released Gen 4, which again, like Runway were the leader of AI video for a while. Then a load of other models came out and kind of surpassed them a little bit and became sexier. And now Runway, and I've been saying constantly, like, do not take your eye off Runway because they've had such cool features for so long. So they've come out with Gen 4. A lot of people are talking about it, character consistency and just level of the video. People are really impressed with it. It's pretty new. Again, I haven't had a chance to play with it, but the reports are really, really good. So yeah, they were some of the releases that caught my eye, that looked pretty exciting.
Also released this week that we don't want to spend a whole lot of time on, but I think is possibly one of the most important things. So OpenAI released a new benchmark. And in this benchmark, what they've asked the model to do is to replicate the findings in AI experiments and so on. And you will remember, this is the reason why I think it's important. You will remember during the O3 demo back in the 12 days of Shipmas back in December, one of the OpenAI engineers joked that the next time they should demo the model making itself better. And he was quickly shot down, poor fella, by Sam Altman, who told, don't even joke about it on live TV. So now what they've done, that which gets measured gets improved. And I think this is important because what they're doing is, it failed, by the way, the model's failed. But it doesn't matter, right? It means that they'll get better. So if you can come up with 100 hypotheses of how to improve an AI, using this benchmark, then they can come up with lots and lots of ways to try and prove that hypothesis is correct or not. And I think this is going to drive forward the development of AI and AI capabilities hugely. This is where you cross the precipice from humans doing the research and coming up with new ideas to the AI improving itself. If they can get a model which scores really highly on this benchmark, they will then have the tooling that's necessary for AI to improve itself.
I don't see that. I don't get that leap that you're making. I get it. Sorry, I get the leap that you're making, but I think it's a very big leap. Like, I see this as a much smaller thing because, like, the study basically was, here's some AI research that was done, cutting edge AI research done recently. Here it is. Now we want you to replicate this and write the code and see, can you replicate the results? And I'm trying to remember what even the best performing model was not great, was
Scored
it?
terribly. Scored terribly, yeah.
I
38%.
can't remember what it was.
Yeah, 38%.
Yeah.
Was what I got. Yeah. So what you do is you get your biggest, bestest model, right? The one that can think, right, for the longest. You turn its temperature up to 1, right? So put it into a dreamlike state. And then you run it 1,000 times and say, I want you to come up with 1,000 different ways that you could possibly solve problem X. Come up with the hypothesis, come up with a solution that you think works, and then, figure out the problem. Then what you do is when you've got those 1,000 hypotheses, then you run the model that passed this benchmark, and it goes through and it will reliably tell you which one of those 1,000 ideas is the right way to solve that problem. And you just rinse and repeat, and the model starts to improve itself.
Yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I just find it funny. I guess I just find it funny that you make that leap to kind of like, yeah, great, progress AI at all costs and get to the singularity. And meanwhile,
Yeah.
I see a report that says, yeah, we're actually not as far along as we thought. It can't even replicate the results of a paper that it has access to, not to mind actually do something new. But I guess that's exactly why we call this the AI argument. This is the difference
in thinking, but let me give OpenAI a bit of kudos, because the best model out there that I'm aware of at the moment for coding is Claude, right? And I don't know, I haven't used the Gemini 2.51 yet. Apparently it's better. So with that caveat. But OpenAI, in fairness to them, keep releasing benchmarks with Claude and show that Claude is better than their model at writing code and debugging it, which is credit to them for doing that. Okay, but it's also pushing their researchers to fix that problem. And when they fix that problem, they'll fix this problem too.
It's very true, actually. That was one of the things I noticed as well, that it was Claude Sonnet, wasn't it, that did the best at this replicating the papers, even though it didn't do brilliantly, but it did the best out of the models they tested. And I was just thinking about that. We've talked before about like when models are released, they always talk about the benchmarking they did and how their own model just happens to be at the top of the benchmarks. And
Always.
so it
Yeah, yeah.
was, yeah. In fairness, it was interesting to see that this clearly was actually an unbiased study. Um,
Yes.
in my newsfeed, I was seeing a load of stuff related to copyright. I don't know if you were, but it really feels to me like the whole copyright debate is really heating up again everywhere.
Mhm.
So I'm going to fly through these kind of like three stories because they're all
Yeah.
related to copyright. One was, the UK had this plan to allow AI to train on all copyrighted material unless you opted out. There's been huge pushback from the creative sector, and well, anyone really, anyone who holds rights, copyrights, has been pushing back on it. And now OpenAI and Google have weighed in, and they've both rejected it as well, for different reasons. I think OpenAI said that experience from other jurisdictions, including the EU, shows that opt-out models face significant implementation challenges. While transparency obligations could see developers deprioritize the market. And then Google said rights holders can already effectively exercise choice and control to prevent web crawlers from scraping content online. Now we know that's a lie because we there's loads of studies showing that the AI crawlers are not honoring what the sites are telling them to stay out and
And there,
and
and there's
not.
that huge libgen library which they're all using to train their models too, allegedly, which has all the
Yeah.
copyrighted material in it.
So that, I just thought that was interesting. But again, private companies looking after their own agenda.
It's not
OpenAI.
Frank. It's not private companies, right? It's national security. It's gone beyond. Private companies at this stage. It
If
doesn't
it's
matter. Copyright.
national, okay, if it's national security. If it's, are you being facetious? Are you messing? Are you messing
No,
with
I'm
me now?
absolutely
You're not. You're
serious.
actually
No,
okay.
I'm delighted I didn't make you spit your coffee out.
This drives me like
In
this drives me nuts.
so
That communication from OpenAI to try to manipulate the Trump administration into changing the law in their favor, that drives me absolutely nuts. And this whole like it's national security thing drives me nuts.
Right.
Okay, you know what? If it's national security, and if
Yeah.
we're on the brink of AGI, like they say, and if it's
Yeah.
going to completely overhaul society, you know what? Okay, nationalize the AI companies. Because clearly this is far too important to be in the hands of private companies and they should be nationalized. My only problem with that, and the only reason that I wouldn't push for that is I don't think I want the Trump administration nationalizing the AI companies. Maybe,
No, no,
maybe in
no.
the
You
EU,
already
maybe in the
have.
EU we should
Frank,
nationalize
hold
them.
on a second. They already have nationalized OpenAI. If you check the board of OpenAI recently, the NSA are on the CIA are. I'm not joking. They're on the board.
Yeah.
They're as good as nationalized. I mean, we could try and nationalize some European AI companies. You don't have any because there's too much regulation. But I'm
Well,
not going to go down that.
we have Mistral, we have Flux, we have, I can't think of any others. I'm sure there's one or two.
Like a
Um,
Mistral or Gordon, but their stuff is open. Anyway, I'm not joking, right? The Chinese courts are not going to they're not going to respect your British or your European copyright infringement rulings. So good luck there.
I mean, can I commit a crime because my neighbor commits it? Is that okay?
No, that's not my
Well,
argument at all. My argument is
he stole all the jewels from that jeweler shop. So I thought stealing them from this jeweler shop would be fine.
I'm going more with the Dutch model, right? I don't know if you remember it. It was the Harry Enfield show years ago, and it was two cops in a cop car. They were smoking a split, and it was like, yes, this is Han. She is my partner. She is also my partner. We used to have a problem with the smoking of the smoky, but then we made it legal. No problem. And what you do is you take the thing that's illegal and you make it legal, and then it's okay. But obviously,
Yes.
that's a little bit of a facetious argument, right? What I'm saying is you regularize
Yeah.
it. You create a system where the copyright material can be used,
Yeah.
but you also recognize that there is a greater good that's being served by not giving you the choice to opt out.
I agree. I think like we kind of agree here. It's just that I
Yeah.
don't think we should do it in the interests of private companies who have a profit motive. I think that, yes, we might need to completely overhaul our entire concept of creative ownership, but not for the benefit of Sam Altman, not for the benefit of Mark Zuckerberg. And therefore, we need to figure out how we do this in a way that either the companies either the companies are obligated to the greater good, which they're not, or we figure out a way to do it societally out of the hands of private companies, which, I'm not saying these are easy problems to solve, but I think
Yeah.
they're discussions that need to be happening.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, and in Europe, the way that that's going to happen is the models are going to be open source. That's how you make them for the greater good. And there's all sorts of other. I mean, I've come around to the view. I didn't always think that we should open source the models, but I've now come to the view that we should. But there's all sorts of. I mean, and all sorts of other issues have started to become apparent to me this week about open source models around fraud. And this was a funny thing, right? This is Justin's personal story about how bad AI can get for me as a person. These are my feelings, Frank.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get married sometime in the next 12 months. And I wanted to search
Ooh.
up images of a monkey suit. And do you know what was on the internet? All I could find on the internet was pictures of bleeding monkeys in suits. No 1920s gentlemen in black and white suits. No, just monkeys generated by AI wearing suits. The internet is totally polluted with. So anyway, my point being to bring it back is if we create these open source models and put them out there, we're going to have to create a safe space for humans, like an internet, humans only segregated portion of the internet where there's no AI interference. And I don't know how that's going to be done, but you can really imagine, right? And I'll stop joking now for a second, right? You can imagine that what is closed source today is going to be the same capabilities will be open source somewhere 6 to 12 months down the line. And so the images that you can generate, photorealistic images, fraud goes through the roof. And you can't trust anything you see online. So we have to come up with that. That is an issue. And we get to stop worrying about bleeding, copyright holders and AI killing everybody. The internet's going to get killed way before that. We need to solve that problem first.
What do you make? This is kind of related, but maybe not directly. But what do you make of OpenAI saying now that they're going to release an open source model? So I think it was before Christmas we talked in an episode about how Sam Altman said, "Oh yeah, we might be on the wrong side of history on the whole open versus closed debate," and now they're releasing an open source model, and my spidey senses are kind of going off, but I don't know why. And I'm like, are they just kind of, again, cynically speaking, are they just cashing in? Are they just making sure that, for example, companies, is it again profit motivated in terms of there are certain organizations that will not use a closed model for privacy reasons, and they want to be able to serve that market? Or is there something else going on here, do you think?
I think you're right to have your spidey senses tingling. And I had exactly the same question. So if you look at a company that's a big employer here in Waterford, Red Hat. So what Red Hat did was they took open source software, which was Linux, and then they built a service model around that open source software. So if you were a big company, you could buy Red Hat, which is just Linux. You can get it for free off the internet. They'll charge you money for it, but they'll support it and they'll allow you to develop it and they'll do all these sorts of things. So if you've got super secure use cases, you can use this version of Linux and have the backing of nowadays IBM. And so the question with this is, are they doing it for one, exactly as you described, right? A profit motive. So here's an open source model. If you're a government agency or you're a financial corporation or you're a security corporation, now you can use this in a very secure environment and we'll charge you to support you, right? That's for sure one thing. Is it also to kill the Mistrals, our one and only European AI company? Are they doing it to do that? Who knows? But you're right. My spidey senses are like, they're not just tingling, right? They're on fire.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to skip the other two copyright things because I think our little conversation there covered all of the aspects that would be in that. And I'm going to skip on to some more AI is going to kill us all stories.
Of course,
Not exactly. I know. I remember we talked about, and I'm probably going to massacre his name here now, but Daniel Kokotajlo, I think his name is. He's former OpenAI researcher, and he was
Yes.
concerned that OpenAI was acting recklessly, and he left them. And he has released this report, and basically, I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I was just reading about it, but it's
Yeah.
basically a work of fiction which is designed to kind of make people think about like what could happen if we don't take care over the next couple of years. And like a little excerpt here was so they believe, so he and his co-founders of this company who are doing this believe that AI systems will surpass human level intelligence in the next 2 to 3 years. And they had this little kind of summary of the fiction that said that the year is 2027. Powerful artificial intelligence systems are becoming smarter than humans. And are wreaking havoc on the global order. Chinese spies have stolen America's AI secrets, and the White House is rushing to retaliate. Inside a leading AI lab, engineers are spooked to discover that their models are starting to deceive them, raising the possibility that they'll go rogue. And it starts to paint a dystopian picture. And the thing that really stood out to me was the interviewer toward the end of the article, spoiler alert, toward the end of the article asked Daniel Kokotajlo, if we don't take care and if things like go really, really wrong, like what would your vision of the future be then? And he was like, well, probably, a sky filled with pollution and no humans alive on the planet whatsoever.
It's possible. I mean,
And this kind of dovetails. Now that
can I
was
can I
maybe,
just go through your summary? Just the summary
yeah.
there a little bit, right? There. So AI is wreaking havoc with the global order. That's,
Hmm.
I think, happening right now.
Hmm.
Chinese spy stolen America's AI secrets. I think they've done that, and now they've improved on them and made them better. So maybe it's going the other way, but that happened already. The White House is rushing to retaliate. Well, they've kind of taken a first strike this week, haven't they? And then AI engineers are spooked to discover that their models are starting to deceive them. That was the story that we just talked about.
Absolutely happening already. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely.
So, but I think that, I mean, I think it's, I will say, look, it's great. We need to have more stories, right? But obviously the stories that are dystopian. I mean, how many films have we watched where there's been a glorious AI future? I mean, there's only one that I can think of, in fact. There's a question for you now. What's the one movie with a glorious future with AI?
I can't think of any.
Wall-E, the one with the little
You know
robot.
what? I can't believe I'm saying this, but I still have not watched Wall-E.
Frank, to put your mind at rest. Go watch Wall-E.
Right.
It'll make you
I
a week.
I'm going to watch it this week.
It's really funny, right? So they have all these AI. They don't even call it because it's a story about a robot. But all the humans in it are really fat and lazy, and they have these sort of levitating chairs. They just sort of go around talking to each other on these levitating chairs. It's great. Go watch Wall-E. Cheerio.
Well, that leads us really nicely into the next story, which is kind of linked to the Daniel Kokotajlo thing, which was the father of the internet and hundreds of tech experts worry we'll rely on AI too much. So I read this on CNN, and they were basically saying that they were looking at how will AI change the way that humans think, and they got a huge number of futurists and experts to have a think about this, and they said 60% of the respondents said that they expect AI will change human capabilities in a deep and meaningful or fundamental revolutionary way over the next 10 years.
Yep.
Half said they expect AI will create changes to humanity for the better and the worse in equal measure, while 23% said the changes will be mostly for the worse. 16% only said changes will be mostly for the better. And then the remainder said they didn't know, or there would be very little change. And they predicted it would be mostly negative changes to 12 human traits, including social and emotional intelligence, capacity and willingness to think deeply, empathy, and application of moral judgment and mental well-being. But they also said they expected just 3 areas to experience mostly positive change: curiosity and capacity to learn, decision-making and problem-solving, and innovative thinking and creativity. And
In chat, because
there
I
was,
don't agree with that at all. On loads of fronts, I just don't agree with it, right? So, and it depends on the application, right? And I'd say, look at what do you do every January, right? Every January, everybody goes and joins up the gym, and right, we don't have to plow the fields anymore. We don't have to work with our muscles, right? But we still go to the gym and we work out. So I can imagine in the future, if there's machines doing a lot of cognitive work, maybe we'll become addicted to Sudoku or whatever, right? Your brain is humans will still want to exercise their brain. It's just the same as your muscle, right? Um, and then I completely disagree with the fact that it will have like a terrible effect on human interaction and stuff. That depends on the application. It could create a world where we've got much deeper human interactions. Like, what do you do, right? You get married
Mm.
to someone, right? And then you spend 8 hours a day in bed asleep. You spend at least 8 hours a day working. Unless you work beside the person, you're not going to talk to them at all. You spend 2 hours commuting to and from work. And then you spend a couple of
Mm.
hours looking after the kids or making dinner. How much actual time do you spend with your so-called life partner? A very small
Yeah.
amount of time. And so if you create a world where AI is, robots are doing all the mechanical work and they're also doing all the decisions and stuff, you end up with an awful lot more time to spend with your life partner,
Mm.
which you would expect would give you much deeper relationships. So I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, I think so. That's interesting because they had a lot of these futurists and experts write essays to go along with it was like a survey, but they also got them to write essays. And
Yeah.
Richard Reisman, non-resident senior fellow at the Foundation for American Innovation, he said that the next decade marked a tipping point in whether AI augments humanity or de-augments it. And he basically said that we are now being driven in the wrong direction by the dominating power of the tech industrial complex, but we still have a chance to right that. And that's basically what the AI argument is all about, is that like my fear, I can envision a wonderful utopian AI superintelligence world. However, I don't think we'll get there with these private companies driving the way forward. Which also brings me to Mark Schaefer's essay. And
Yeah.
Mark Schaefer, so I'm in Mark Schaefer's Rise community, and he
Yeah.
was invited to write an essay. That's how I came across this. And he said something really interesting. I mean, he 100% believes that, like, a little bit like you were saying, that we would be driven to, creative endeavors, and we will always value human art and human input. But he also said, and we've talked about this on the show before as well, I think we've made this point before. He said, obviously, there must be a social safety net, including some sort of basic income distribution. This will be implemented in some countries, but social programs become deeply politicized in the US and implementation will stall. Ironically, the US will lead the world in AI development and then watch its society rapidly decline because of it. This will accelerate the psychological and financial deterioration of an American society already in danger of becoming addicted to their personalized AI-driven media. This disruption could be avoided. Even if there's a small probability of this widespread disorder, the government should be making plans for it now. So all kind of saying the same thing, that like there is the possibility here for a great future, but with the forces that are driving it right now, everyone's a bit cynical about whether we'll get there, I think.
Yeah. And what do you, yeah, I mean, that's a great point. The law of unintended consequences, I'm sort of depending on the law of unintended consequences. So the law of unintended consequences here might be you've got the current administration and they're putting in tariffs and all sorts of things. They're gone to one side of, the political spectrum in a very big way, right? And maybe what happens is it's like a pendulum and it swings way back to the other side just in time for when the robots come and take over all the work. Maybe there is a terrible recession now and maybe terrible things happen. And then people say, oh my God, this cannot happen. We must put a safety net in for people so that, they're not starving. And maybe all the right things happen for all the wrong reasons. We can hope, I guess. But yeah, it's a great point. It's interesting. I don't know what'll happen. What do you think?
What do I think will happen? I
Go on,
think
Frank.
I think if we want the good, the utopian future, I
Yeah.
think we need to be really, really seriously thinking about the power that these private companies have right now over AI and the direction of it. And I'm really nervous about the relationship between these companies and the current US administration, which could really, um, I guess,
What would you
color the
do?
future in
What
a
would
way
you
that
do?
I would not be happy with.
What would you do if you were the head of the European Union at the moment?
That's a really good question. What would I do? I think you've actually made some really interesting points on this show before about, initiatives that really encourage AI development. And, previously I've been like, yeah, it's a good idea. Whereas now I'm like, ooh, the way that the whole global situation is going, now I'm like, yeah, actually, we seriously need to be furthering AI development in the EU, but we need to be doing it in a way that is for the greater good and benefits society and not benefit private companies. I don't know how we do that. I wish I knew. I think you have had some interesting thoughts on it before, which would still be private companies, but it would be enabling them to drive forward with development. I think there's another way. I just don't know what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think. Do you know what I think now? Right on there, there's something happened just before we came on air. So there was all these tariffs went on. This is kind of a simile, right? So what I think Europe should do is similar to what I think is happening somewhere else right now. So, um, these tariffs were put on, and Vietnam got hit very hard with the tariffs. I think they got hit with like 50 or 60% tariffs, and the Nike share price tanked, right? Because they make all of their shoes and stuff in Vietnam. Now, it turns out that Nike employs about 500,000 people in Vietnam. And so Vietnam came out about an hour or two ago and said, look, we'll drop our tariffs for American companies to zero, and whatever, said they'll do a deal. Now, this is totally bullying by America on Vietnam, right? On one respect. But in another way, I can also see it that it's Vietnam going, well, it's way more important for us that those people are employed. So we're going to do a deal, make sure those people are employed. And actually, there's an opportunity here in Asia, I would imagine, to ship now a whole load of products through Vietnam to get them in tariff free or a low tariff into America. So there's a terrible situation. There's a bully out there. And this is a country that's saying, right, I'm going to take advantage of the situation to do the right thing. Europe needs to do something similar when it comes to AI. So there's bullies out there and there's all these sort of things. So you need to set up the rules to your benefit for those companies to do the right thing. So we're going to, give you tax breaks. We're going to make it legal to use copyrighted material. We're going to do, all of these different things. We're going to incentivize you to set up here in Europe, but you have to release your models, right? You have to make them open source. You have to, if you want the protection, you have to tell us what copyrighted material you've used. So it is a checks and balances type thing. And every day it becomes more important that we start to do it. So let's hope they do.
Yeah. We did have a happy story to end off,
Yes.
thankfully.
Thank God.
That got pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Jesus, this is the world we're living in. It's insane.
I know. So anyway, Gring's application, brilliant news. What's the name of the gentleman, right? I'm just delighted for him. So Joseph Coates. This, by the way, is one of the smartest uses of AI technology I have ever seen. So Joseph Coates, a little over a year ago, Joseph Coates was told that he was going to die. And he was asked, do you want to die at home or do you want to die in the hospital? And he had a weird syndrome called Holmes syndrome, which is very, very rare. So he had, luckily for them, his wife had met a doctor, and talk about doing a terrible job on somebody's name. Dr. Feigenbaum, I think his name is a very unusual doctor's name, but contacted him. Dr. Feigenbaum said, here, look, put your husband onto these particular medications and let me know how he gets on. Lo and behold, Joseph Coates starts to improve, and now he's got a transplant for his liver, I believe it is, and he's in remission and he's cured. What do? They used AI, and they used it in the most brilliant way. So there's a lot of talk about AlphaFold and these things that cope with new proteins and new drugs and blah, 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 all these new things. But it takes a long time to get approval to use these drugs on humans. So instead, what Dr. Wagenbaum is doing is he's looking at the catalog of existing drugs that are already approved on humans and finding alternative uses for them to see what other diseases drugs that are already approved may fix. That's what they found, and it worked, and it saved this guy's life. It's a brilliant use of the technology.
I mean, and fair play to that doctor for driving that project forward, because I think in the story it explained that he had actually had this experience. So he had an illness, and he ended up going away and like researching all these other drugs just to see. And one of the ways he researches them is he looks at the side effects of the drugs, and if the side effect of the drug is something that potentially might help with his symptoms, he would try out the drug. And he found, again, he found something that helped him. And then along the way, he was like, okay, well, this is too labor intensive. Could AI do this? But he found, I think, if I remember correctly, he found it really hard to get backing. And I don't know how he did it in the end, but like this was kind of like a passion project for him, because he was like, people were not interested, because if you invent a drug, you can make a fortune out of it. But then after a certain amount of time, the patent expires, everyone makes one, profits diminish. And so finding new uses for drugs that are actually already in existence isn't a priority for anybody except someone like him who wants to do good in the world. And I think this is a nice little metaphor for, why we need to get AI, the direction of AI for society, out of the hands of private companies somehow, because they're not going to be interested in the greater good. They're going to be interested in the profitability of the implementations.
And famously, what heart medicine do we take men of a certain age nowadays because of a positive side effect? Viagra.
Yes.
That's exactly how Viagra came into being. Which brings me nicely on to our last story, our encore story, which was AI-powered condoms released in India.
This is nearly as good as my AI-powered toothbrush, Justin. And there's one big difference. One big difference between the AI toothbrush and the AI condoms.
Yes, what's that?
My AI toothbrush actually exists. It's downstairs. It's real.
There's a really rude joke I asked you to notice. There's a really rude joke. I can't tell you. Do you want me to tell you? I can't tell you.
You'll have to now. You'll have to. I mean, I hate rude jokes. You can't leave everyone hanging like that.
Oh, okay, here we go. So my girlfriend turned around, said, Justin, bad news for you. I've just been to the gynecologist. We can't have sex for the next month. I said, that's okay. What's your dentist say? We're going to get cancelled, aren't we? There we go.
Oh, I don't know why I encouraged you to say that. Why did I encourage you to tell that? What was I thinking?
No, you should know. You should know better. Anyway, on that bombshell.
Condoms, April Fool's joke. A lot of people were fooled. A lot of people thought that these AI condoms were real. They thought that it came with an app that would tell you about your performance and keep track of your performance history. I don't know what you were meant to do with that. Maybe you were meant to put that on your dating profiles then. And yeah, I don't know.
As I said last week, what do you...
Refresh is real. So, I wouldn't be surprised.
Wonders will never cease. All right. Until next week, Frank. A pleasure as always.
Good luck.